Welcome to the Across the Spoilerverse podcast. I'm your host, Paul, joined across the Spoilerverse by my man, Greg Albert, out in the US. How's it going, Greg, baby? What's happening?
I'm doing good, baby. But at the same time, I'm wondering, why are we called Across the Spoilerverse? What happened to real spoilers? My name has been officially removed from the title already? Second
Yep.
episode?
People
What's
didn't
happening?
like it. No, so what happened was, me and Greg, we came up with the podcast idea. We thought, I run a channel called Heavy Spoilers. Greg runs one called Real Rejects. We'll combine it, we'll make real spoilers. We put 10 seconds thought into it. We thought we've got a banger here. It explains it all. Turns out, though, there's another podcast out there called Real Spoilers. Those guys have been doing it for about 10 years, over 700 episodes, so they might have a bit on us. We did the first one. But so what happened was, I didn't see this, but they tweeted us saying, "Hey guys, we run the same podcast with the same name, and do you mind just changing it?" I didn't see it, and then a couple of days later, I start getting bombarded with stuff like thief, and there was one said, so you stole a podcast name and thought people wouldn't notice, huh? And I was like, we literally put like 10 seconds thought into this entire thing. I wasn't really trying to steal anything, but the guy, we spoke to him, Kevin, really nice guy there, totally understood it. He was like, you know what, we seen it, and we didn't think you'd stole it. We could see how you had organically come up with real spoilers on your own, so we'll let you off. We'll call the guys off. They'll stop tweeting you, and just come up with a new name. You got 48 hours. So the new name is the Real Spoilers Podcast. No, it's Across the Spoilerverse. We did start searching lots of different names. We tried Spoilercast. There was hundreds of ones called that. Heavy Spoilers. There was even a Heavy Spoilers podcast out there, which I'll find them and I'll kill them.
Someone suggested Heavy Rejects, and I was like, that sounds like we're talking about overweight people, and I don't know if we want to do that.
That's like an incels podcast, which do turn over a lot of money, to be fair. Podcast names, they're difficult to come up with. I know that there's now two Robservations out there. I saw today that Rob Liefeld had posted his new podcast called Robservations, and Robert Meyer Burnett's had one for years and years, so they're probably going to be duking it out on Twitter next. We just thought, what's the most recent thing we can say that it's so recent no one could have possibly have made a podcast about it yet? So it was Across the Spoilerverse. We're going to bring you spoilers every single week from across the Atlantic Ocean. We've got the US and the UK covered, and that's the name change. So if anyone messages us saying you stole Across the Spoilerverse, I tell you, you're dead. I've got the money, I've got the contacts, I've got the resources. You are dead, so don't bloody do it. No, lovely speaking to those guys at Real Spoilers. Go check them out. They dealt with it really well, and it wasn't. There's been some companies that I've dealt with. Greg will tell you a message saying, "Hey guys, your thumbnail looks a bit similar to one I did. Do you mind just changing it?" And they got lawyers involved and were instantly on the case. And we won't go into who that is, but it's quite a big channel, and it was quite funny.
It doesn't take a lot of research to figure out who it is. It's pretty easy to narrow it down if you guys want to. We could have generated more numbers on this podcast if we just created drama with real spoilers. If we refused.
Well, I don't want to go on a rant against any screen sort of YouTube channels. We'll just leave it at that and not talk about anything else. I'm already in trouble. I can hear the lawyers on the phone right
now. Well, man, we should hop into Across the Spoilerverse today then. Because looking over our list, and Paul, my job today, everyone listening, I'm going to make sure we stay on track. We read your feedback. We got a lot of great comments. We got a lot of love. But we heard the two people who were like, there's a little bit too much meandering, and we feel it too. Yeah. So we're gonna make sure we are on track today, and we're gonna have video chapters this time, aren't we, Paul?
Yeah, definitely. And go to our clips channel, Heavy Spoilers Clips, where we'll be posting little segments from the podcast, just talking on certain topics. You might want to just skip over all the 2 hours of meandering and rambling about what we've been up to this week. That'll make sure you head over there as well.
Yeah. So today we are going to be talking about James Cameron. Apparently, Terminator never dies. Never
Mm,
dies. We got John Wick resurrected already. We
okay.
got Deadpool 3 news we got to talk about. It was specifically regarding the writer strike and him improvising. It's going to be ADR the movie. And then we have of course, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, fitting,
Let's
apt.
go.
We're gonna do a spoiler discussion of it, and we discussed beforehand what we wanted to talk about. So yeah, guys, leave a like on this video. That helps us out in the algorithm. And both Paul and I, we agreed right away, without hesitation, that the first thing we wanted to talk about would be the Terminator sequel. So
Mm.
Paul, why don't you kick us off? What is going on with the Terminator sequel, my friend? James Cameron's in the news.
He's announced that he was working on a new script for it, but he wants to see what happens with AI and go from there. It's like, come on, mate. What? Just write it. Like AI, you can pretty much predict where it's going to go anyway. It's going to steal
Have the
everyone's
AI
job.
write it. Have it chat
Then,
GBT write it for
yeah, yeah.
you.
Maybe that's what he meant. I'm just seeing where AI goes, and if I can hand it off to that, then I don't need to do any work. But yeah, just like you can kind of predict where it's going to go. We're probably not going to get nukes coming in. I think AI is probably just going to steal all our jobs, everything we love doing, like drawing, writing scripts, things people enjoy doing creatively. That's going to get taken away. So yeah, James, just get to it. It might be the right last script ever written in Hollywood. But you know what? This entire movie kind of hinges, for me personally, on whether John Connor's going to be in it. Because I rewatched Dark Fate the other week. I've been doing a Terminator retrospective on the channel, doing the first film. The breakdown of that's coming up very soon. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to watch Dark Fate. Didn't like it at the time. I thought, times, it heals all wounds. We'll see what happens with it. Straight away, as soon as they kill John Connor, I was like, yeah. So I don't just James Cameron. Yeah, he obviously can make good movies, big ones as well. He makes massive events, which Avatar's just shown. But I don't know if we need another one. We really don't.
It's a franchise that just never seems to go away. And Terminator 2 is Terminator 2 one of your favorite movies of all? It fluctuates for
Yeah.
me as it's definitely one of the most influential in my life. And
Mm.
that and The Matrix I'm constantly fluctuating between which one is my all-time favorite movie.
Yeah.
So Terminator 2 and there was a time where you said James Cameron in Terminator, that meant good news, where
Yeah.
he endorsed Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines, and
He's
we were
endorsed
like,
them all. Yeah.
no, Genesis. It was
Yeah.
Genesis is the one he
Genesis.
endorsed. And then I went like, okay, this must be great. And then it wasn't. And then he was obviously involved with the producing and the story development and did a whole like Q&A with Tim Miller before they even started filming for Dark Fate. So I was like, here we go. Terminator back on track. And then the first 10 minutes, I was like, what is this movie? You're kind of breaking my heart here. And
Yeah.
now to hear he's writing it, and I'm kind of getting a bit of like a season of the witch vibe of Halloween franchise.
Mm.
If he's not focused on even the things to do like a bunch of Terminator movies that are about a Terminator and robots and stuff, and then to at least present how he wants to go about it with this AI angle and not really focus on the machines. I don't know. It sounds like a completely different franchise. It sounds more akin to when Ridley Scott was like, "I'm doing an Alien prequel," and then it wasn't an Alien prequel; it was Prometheus, and he wanted to just keep it like that. So it just doesn't even sound like it's going to be a Terminator film to me. Like you need certain earmarks of it, but it's James Cameron, so we'll see how it goes, right?
The problem is with all the Terminator stuff is that every sequel after T2 is kind of doing its own thing. Like Terminator 3, Judgment Day is happening, mate. You didn't avoid it. Salvation, we're in the future war. Okay, baby, I'm down with that. Genesis, no, let's go back to what originally worked, but we're gonna change things up from that original movie and go in a slightly different direction. And then Dark Fate as well. That's just this whole other reboot thing. That what my big problem with Dark Fate was rewatching it is that they crap so much over those first two films, but they also rely so heavily on them. So all the good moments in them are with Arnie and Linda Hamilton. It's
Yeah.
like we that's the past. Get rid of it. It's rubbish. You want these new people that you can't even remember the names of. I think it was Danny and Grace was the character. So to be fair, I can remember the names of them. But it's like get rid of those old ones, but also build the plot heavily around them. They have to be in every scene. Once Linda Hamilton shows up, we need an old character in every scene. So it's kind of like it's very misguided, and it's almost just rehashing the elements of the past and after crapping all over them. And when I was watching it, I was thinking, why would I invest in this person when 10 years down the line, another director could come along and go, well, Danny, she's going to get killed in the first 5 minutes, so you don't care anymore. So it's just it just kills the whole franchise for me. I mean, John Connor, everything was built around him. And like I said, if James Cameron focuses that next movie around John Connor, we'll see how I do. We'll see if I get on board with it. But I just don't have faith in the guy. I think it'll be a totally different movie named Terminator, like you said. Sort of a Prometheus thing.
Like, it's funny when it reminded me of the Dark Fate comparison of the experience of that, because you covered Alien 3 on your channel recently. This channel right here, you covered Alien 3. And how they killed off Hicks and Newt at the very top of that film. And that was such a blow, because that was that Alien 3 came out not like there's definitely not a gap like how there was between T2 and Dark Fate, and Dark Fate was being pitched as the real Terminator 3. And I was thinking if that really did come, if Dark Fate did come out like shortly after Terminator 2, can you imagine just how much more pissed off people would be about it? But at the same time, I was thinking Arnold, he's not going to. He has stated that he doesn't want to return. Like, he really believes the audience doesn't care for him to return. He just wants to do 5 seasons of FUBAR and then leave it at that. And the other thing that was really beloved, even though it wasn't a hit, the one that was most beloved was actually the Sarah Connor Chronicles. And I haven't seen any of that, but I know it's got a really good fan. Have you seen it? Is that good? Because if they were able to
the first season.
And it was good. All right, sweet. Well, there's a hope for Terminator to still succeed without Arnie.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think they should get John Connor for it. Not John Connor. What the hell am I talking? John Cena. John Cena. Very similar to John Connor. But yeah, get John Cena to play the Terminator. He's got the build. He can pull off the comedy stuff. He can pull off the threatening stuff. Get the guy as a Terminator. If Arnie's not going to do it, John Cena's my man. Picking him now.
Wacky Terminator. That would be fun. They'll Fast X him up. Well, yeah. Well, we got another sequel to talk about, don't we, Paul? I'm keeping us on track today, Paul. We got ourselves the return, the resurrection of John Wick in John Wick 5, something that I personally did not really want, and I feel like there was a way to make this news exciting for even fans like ourselves if they waited a while instead of going, nope, we're working on it. And Keanu Reeves, I was at a Q&A with him where he really said that he stated that one of the main reasons he returned is so that way John Wick could die. He wanted John Wick to die. And to see that they're doing 5 and David Leitch being like, no, not David Leitch, Chad Stahelski. Yeah, Chad Stahelski. Yeah. Get them confused. Chad Stahelski saying that, I'm open-minded if something does come to mind, but Lionsgate does seem to be pushing it. You've been covering John Wick a lot on your channel. Were you at all excited about this, Paul?
I was a bit annoyed because I don't see what else they can do with the character. I think once you have the death story, that's it. Like, can Chapter 5 then be... he comes back, he takes down the high table again, and then dies at the end. That could be one scenario. Or he comes back, takes down the high table again, and then lives at the end. And they just keep churning out these sequels forever. Personally, I don't think they're going to top the ending of John Wick 4 in terms of giving the character a proper send-off. I think it's the same with Iron Man in the MCU. I think Captain America going off with Peggy Carter. Those things, you're not going to get better than them, so don't attempt it. Just leave it. Don't Terminator it. Don't try and dark fate everything and give you a crazy take on stuff on how he comes back. Just leave it at that, yeah. But obviously people want to see the franchise keep going, but as soon as I saw the headline, I just thought, cash grab. Lionsgate, they're like, you guys, you did talk about doing a 5th film at one point, which they did, and then they decided that they didn't really have enough ideas for it, and that 4 would be the perfect place to say goodbye. Just kill them off. So yeah, personally, I think they should have stopped there. But Hollywood is Hollywood, and sequels are one thing that constantly generate money. And with the last movie making so much, they just can't leave it alone. They can't leave the dog alone. You know the entire. You know what the entire saying of the franchise is? Just leave John Wick alone. That happens at several points. So rewatch them. The characters are like, don't go after John, and people keep going after him, and it just leads to chaos and everything come crumbling down. So yeah, maybe they should learn from the lessons of the film and just leave the guy alone and let him die, please.
And Keanu Reeves is getting much older now. he is much older. As great as the guy ages,
Yeah,
I am concerned for him, and it has to reach some whole new fantasy level. I feel like he's just going to become the actual boogeyman by this point. He's just going to evolve into the real
yeah.
boogeyman.
Well,
Haunting people.
I said when the movie released that I did a little joke tweet that he could be in hell and he's got to fight his way, because the film's very much a metaphor for Dante's Inferno, and he could fight his way through hell, get to God, get to heaven, get back with his wife. It'd be like some crazy. I was taking the mick, obviously. I don't think they should do that.
It's kind of cool.
It seems like that's
kind of cool. If it was like an anime, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
As much as you're making a joke, I'm like, there's an anime version of this that would be pretty fucking sweet to watch. Like a
right now, someone's Right now, someone's putting that prompt into Chat GPT with generate a script.
Write me a script for John Wick. I'm sure they're trying to figure out something. Is there anything within the John Wickiverse that they're developing? I'm looking forward to the Continental personally, even though we haven't seen much about it. I'm curious to see if they are able to bring the action, if they're able to replicate the kind of action style from the films onto TV. I feel like they would have a really big hit on their hands if they can do that. But the ballerina one, as much as I like Ana de Armas, I feel like if you don't have Chad Stahelski directing it, it just doesn't excite me. For some reason, like, who is the director of the ballerina? Let me do some little tech work here.
You Google and I'll talk over the top and get people distracted to make them keep hanging on. The retention level's got to stay high. So yeah, I totally agree. Who was it? Sorry,
Len Wiseman.
What else? Yeah, I've heard that name before.
He's sure. Underworld.
Bloody hell.
Total Recall. Okay. Total Recall remake.
No, I've never seen it actually. To be fair, it might be great.
Yeah. I've never seen it either.
Yeah, so do you want to... You know, the franchise might be dead by the time they get to John Wick 5 if the Continental and the ballerina underperform.
No,
let's see, though. They might Disney Plus it, you know what I mean? Where you just completely kill all the goodwill for your franchise with TV shows and spin-offs, and it gets to the point when the movies come out, people are like, I don't know if I'm that interested anymore.
I feel like what would be exciting is if they announced a Donnie Yen movie. If they did that or whatever. Yeah. If they a Kane film, if they did something about him, like a blind warrior and living in this world, that would excite me. That would excite everyone.
That as 5. Yeah, do that as John Wick 5. Just call it John Wick 5 Kane.
Yeah, if there's like a reward out on his head for some stupid reason, or if they got all the bad guys who survived throughout the franchise and you put them in one big Suicide Squad movie together or something. Yeah. There's a way to do it where there's a way to keep the franchise alive if they wanted to, because the world is so big. But yeah, I don't feel like you need to bring back Keanu Reeves, who has spoken like 4 words. Although he is like, when he is doing the action scenes, he might not be the best with the delivery. He might not be. But when he is doing the action, I feel like no one gets the body language and the rage spewing from his facial features and the whole demeanor as well as Keanu Reeves does. There's such a captivating part of watching him. It's more than just watching him do fight scenes, and there is such a great performance within. There's an emotion he's permeating through the screen when he's doing it, and that's the hard thing to replicate. It's like I noticed that when I watched, it really stood out to me with John Wick 3 when him and Halle Berry were having their big fight scene, because Halle Berry feels very choreographed. Like it feels like an actor who's choreographed, and not really much of the performance is in there. Whereas, she's doing good. She's moving great. But then when they cut to Keanu, there's like the freaking struggle that he's got going on at all times, and that's what I think helps you stay on board without it becoming exactly Fast and Furious is his performance. Yeah. So there is strength to it. At the same time, I feel like you can't carry this on without him. But Paul, do you have more to say about this? I'm going to make sure.
I do, yeah. Just speaking of Halle Berry, there's obviously lots of side characters in the franchise that never really got send-offs either. You had Common, Ruby Rose, Halle Berry's another one. I mean, they can bring a lot of those kind of ended on cliffhangers as well. The Common one especially was like he stabbed him in the gut as a professional, or was it in the heart? He stabbed him somewhere as a professional courtesy, and then was like, "I'll leave you alive, and I'll see you later." And then Ruby Rose, who was like, "I'll be seeing you," and she did the same thing, or something like that. And these characters, you got the tease that they were going to come back at some point, and I always thought they're going to show up in 3, and I thought they were going to show up in 4, but they never showed up. So maybe in 5 we'll bring everyone back. We'll Avengers it. Said it is the Avengers.
Why didn't they come back? You would think they would have, especially when they set them up to come back.
Yeah.
And they never actually do. That is a very fascinating question, especially when the bounty.
That's why we're getting 5.
That's why we're getting 5. But the first one to dig his body out from the grave will be the one who. They really should just go supernatural with it. I would be fine with it. I personally would be fine if they just went gung ho supernatural, especially with all its religious tones and everything you were talking about. So, yeah. But Paul, we have ourselves some fascinating Deadpool 3 news, which I feel very bad for them because this should be the epic. This should be so epic, and even though the script is locked for this, and even though they are going to be starting to film it, we have a writer strike going on, and a writer strike allowing no one to do any rewrites on this, including Guild member Ryan Reynolds. And due to him being a writer, he cannot actually improvise during this film of it, and it's creating a whole bunch of controversy because can you stop that man from improvising? What will you do when they've have some workarounds of what they can possibly do, which is, the whole, he's got a mask on, so we can just ADR everything if he wanted to. But still, I'm like, I don't know, man. I think that there's more to it than just having to worry about, because I know a lot of people have already covered this topic, and I think there's a lot of people who are already saying that it's fine. He's got a mask on, so he could just ADR. But there's a lot of times where he doesn't have a mask on and he's improvising. That's some of the funniest moments with him. And there's so much more to it than just his improv lines. Like there's constant rewriting that's happening and constantly having to figure out and retool, reshaping while you're on set and try to figure out scenes. And this has to be great. And especially with Hugh Jackman returning, does this provide any bit of calmness in your soul knowing he can just do ADR later on? And is there any other concerns about what's going on with Deadpool 3 for you?
I would just get the script and go, do you guys know what lines are in this? And when they say no, just go, rip it up, explode it. And then just go, well, it's all up here. And whatever I see on camera right now is exactly what's in that script. No, so it's very difficult for him. I would never actually think that improvising would be classed as writing for some reason. I don't know why, but obviously I'm a novice. I don't really know the ins and outs of this. I don't know what all of the ins and outs of the strike are either. And it's kind of it is a strange thing. But luckily, as you mentioned, he is a character that has a mask, and you can go back and watch those early Deadpool movies, and I can tell you can see some things that might have been made up in ADR, as you called it before, ADR the movie. I think it's going to work out fine for this film. They obviously have the bare basic structure of the plot. I doubt that's going to change, or they're going to need it to. And they're just going to, show like a shoulder shot of Hugh Jackman with his back, and Ryan Reynolds is just standing there, and they'll just animate the mouth moving along with whatever he says in the booth.
Yeah, it's okay. Just to throw a little bit of gasoline on the fire here of some people who don't, especially when you got actors like Ryan Reynolds and Hugh Jackman who already display that they like to improvise together, and I don't know if the rules mean Ryan Reynolds, because he is a screenwriter, because he's one of the credited screenwriters for Deadpool 2, so he's a guild member. And I'm assuming he worked on the script for Deadpool 3 as well. I don't know if that means, Hugh Jackman is allowed to improvise, but Ryan Reynolds can't improvise. But if Hugh Jackman's
Yeah.
improvising, like Ryan Reynolds can't just stick to the script then. If Hugh Jackman's improvising, and a big part of the appeal that I think for Hugh Jackman as well was to lean into the comedy and do a lot more of that kind of fun sensibilities. And a lot of times when you got these scenes, and especially like character scenes, so much of the time you hear the behind the scenes of when these actors are working together. It's like, oh, we couldn't figure the scene out, so we had to like sit down. We met up in our trailer and we worked it out, and we were figuring it out, and then we rewrote it, and then that's what we filmed and ended up making. I hear that story constantly, and so a lot of people are thinking about Ryan Reynolds not being able to improvise, but by proxy, you're also limiting Hugh Jackman from being able to do that as well, because you might have a good script. You might have a solid script on hand, but once you actually start doing the scene, especially for a comedy, you start going, actually, this isn't that funny. And so much of the comedy within, because one thing Hugh Jackman said was he was really drawn to it being a comedy and him getting a chance to showcase this. Like, he was referencing the movie 48 Hours, having a bit of that road trip buddy kind of comedy vibe. And now Hugh Jackman's not going to be able to do that as well. So it's more than just Ryan Reynolds. There's a whole ensemble of people who they rely on to be able to, come up with shit while they're rolling the camera. So while I think the movie will be fine, I worry that the movie won't be as great as people may hope for it to be. Do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I just wish they would end the strike, or not the writers end the strike. I just wish that the studios would see how much this is going to damage their films and their brands by just robbing basically screenwriters of some of the benefits that have made the job bearable for them in the past. And I know there's people out there who are like, well, all those woke movies, that will not be getting any more woke movies. But
Yeah.
there's stuff you like there as well. It's not just the shows I don't like, all those writers on strike, they don't deserve to get paid. It's not that sort of thing. It's every single writer who's come together for this. So every single series you like, every single movie that you like, they're getting affected as well. You like Top Gun Maverick? I bloody like Top Gun Maverick. Stuff like that would be affected. Do you see what I'm saying? So, you've got to, even if you don't like some of the shows, you've got to kind of come together and realize that this is going to damage the industry across the board, and the stuff you like as well, that's going to be hurt by it too. So I just wish the studios would realize, like, we rely on these guys quite a lot. And there's even been some execs who've come out and said little things, like Amy Pascal. She announced that there's a new Spider-Man 4 coming that's been delayed because of the writer's strike. And she's like, we're ready when, she said something weird like, we are ready when they are ready to accept, or something like that. I'm misquoting her. But the point is that they know that they rely on these guys, and there's so much stuff getting delayed, especially after the pandemic as well. It's kind of like, can you not just, give these guys a bit extra for all the work they do? Yes, some of them write woke shows that everyone hates. We get you guys who don't like those shows. We understand, but you have to realize that it's just going to affect everything very badly. And the longer it drags out, the worse it is. Ryan bloody Reynolds can't improvise on set. Do you see what I'm saying? Just let the guy improvise, please.
Let's have some wiggle room here.
Yeah.
Because then that's where I don't know. They haven't even clarified if he's not allowed to improvise on set. Because do you remember when the writer strike was happening? It was like 15 years ago, when the talk show hosts were still doing the shows, but they couldn't have their writers conducting any of it. The talk show hosts, like,
But
Conan
he's part of the
O'Brien,
guild.
exactly, they're part of the guild, and yet they
Okay.
were able to still do their shows, and they're technically doing these bits, with the audience and whatever, where they are improvising the whole time, and it's still there. So I'm like, okay, but what is the rule here? Is it completely different for a talk show when they're credited as, like, one of the head writers of the series as well? So I don't know. It's sad. And then if we get the SAG strike going on too, then I expect massive. I think that would actually help the SAG strike, weirdly, because if the SAGs, I mean, of course, it would help for the actors who deserve to have, everything that they're asking for. I don't really know much about it. I'm just saying that to be nice. I don't really know what they're asking for. But that I think would create a wave as well, something that would be like propulsive and push things forward. Where we're like, all right, we really need to get shit together because now we don't have our actors and writers. And if they can solve something with what I've heard is that if they solve it with their actors, if the SAG strike does happen, that could really help out with what they want to solve with the writers as well. So it could be like a twofold, like dramatic effect to lead everything in a positive direction overall.
Yeah, just get to a point where everyone wins. You don't have to give in to every demand. Just work with those guys. Try and explain why stuff's the way it is now. Just work it out. Just come together, please. I want what's best for everyone. And I hope those guys get what they deserve. Because they do deserve a lot. You don't realize how much writing goes into this stuff.
Yeah, and the constant writing, before you know it, there'll be an editor strike, and nothing will be happening. Yeah. Well, Paul, we've made it to the point where I'm just going to listen to you for 30 minutes now. The Across the Spider-Verse spoiler time. We're going to talk spoilers for Across the Spider-Verse. Paul has collectively gathered 400,000 views off his Spider-Verse videos at the time of recording this. And so everyone's just going to want to hear what you got to say. I did like a 3-hour spoiler talk on this channel yesterday. So I'm ready to just listen to you, Paul.
I didn't want to like watch your video because one, it was 3 hours, but I also didn't want you to influence what I was going to say. But I absolutely loved it. I thought it was, I thought it started off slow. So we begin basically with Gwen telling her story. The first film kind of had that. Every time a Spider-Man was introduced, it was like, here we go again, one more time. And they went through, a comic book origin for themselves, how they came to be, what makes them different, and so on. Gwen sort of got a lot more of a fleshed out one for this film, and we start off in her universe, going through what happened with her and Peter, and then that kind of brought in the Vulture from another universe, and I was a bit like, this is okay, but it's not really blowing my mind. I spoke to you, you saw it way before me, and you were like, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen. I love it, 10 stars out of 20. And
I give it 50%. 10 stars.
Yeah, 50%.
50%.
Which is the highest score you've ever given anything, which is why it was the best. You see, I'm working backwards. Yeah, I messed up, but I'm keeping it going. So yeah, the opening, and then when it jumped to Miles as well, I was kind of like, he was doing stuff with his spot. I thought it was okay. The parents teacher meeting, I think it's called. I thought that was okay. And then I think once we hit the Spider Society, actually, once we hit Mumbattan, I think that's when it really starts to pick up. Obviously that comes off the back of the cameos, which we'll spoil now. So the Spot goes into the multiverse. He comes across Mrs. Chen from the Venomverse. What did you think when you saw that? Because I had it spoiled, so I knew it was coming, but
I thought it was funny.
Yeah,
I was spoiled for me that they do go visit it, so it was. A lot of them weren't. Most of the cameos were not spoiled for me, but the Mrs. Chen one was fun, and it does. I didn't really think about up until right now, this very moment. I didn't think about what it's just like. Okay, so the Venom universe is just its own, like completely separate universe as well. So they could just have a separate I guess my mind is now starting to go down that path of, so they might just have a completely different Spider-Man that might not be the other Spider-Mans in this movie. Just really helped solidify that fact, huh?
Robert Pattinson it.
Oh yeah, that would be great. Yeah, they might as well. Whatever the Madam Web Spider-Man's going to be, that baby they're protecting. Spoiler alert! Leaks. Yeah.
So yeah, then
what was your favorite of the ones that they went to?
The Lego. Yeah, I really liked the Lego one with J. Jonah Jameson and the newspaper that said Doc Ock still at large. Because I'm sure, I might be misremembering this, but I'm sure I had that newspaper Lego set where it had like a little, one of those tiny little squares with a print on that you can stick on the wall, and I'm sure it had Doc Ock still at large. So not only was it a reference to Spider-Man 2, because that's where that newspaper pops up. But it was also a reference to the Lego Spider-Man 2 stuff. But I don't want to get called out in case someone's like, that set never existed actually, and you're a fake for lying about it. But I'm sure it was. And when I seen that, I was like, I've seen that somewhere before. Might have been at my friend Ricky's house or something, but I've experienced that in real life. So, and obviously J. Jonah Jameson was over the top, with J.K. Simmons voicing him. The guy popped up throughout the film at numerous points in the background. I think he was in Gwen's World as well.
Yes. You hear him on the television. Did you hear about who created that Lego world and how Phil Lord and Chris Miller got that? Did you hear about that?
Wow.
Oh wow! I mean, I don't know the full ins and outs details. It's now been like a lot of people are now talking about it. But Coy was talking with Lord and Miller at the screening that we were at, and they were telling him about how there was like a 14-year-old boy who they saw created it. He has his own YouTube channel actually, and so they actually had to hit him up. They contacted him because they wanted him to be the one to create it. And what you're watching is this 14-year-old boy's creation who had to balance creating this while also doing schoolwork and all these things. So some like little kid's dream, literally getting it actually plugged into the movie itself, which is pretty freaking sweet. That's pretty awesome.
I'm just imagining like Avi Arad showing up to the kid's house at like 2 a.m. being like, "Where's the set? We film tomorrow."
Yeah. Was the audio of J. Jonah repurposed from one of the I couldn't tell if it was new audio that J.K. Simmons was doing or if it was repurposed from one of the Raimi films.
I think it was new. Yeah, there was some little variations on the line because obviously, I mean, he has the same talking points every single time, but I'm sure he changed it to say Spider-Woman's a menace, and the one at the end he definitely changed because he mentioned the Sinister Six cartel, which we'll get into later on, but they did have new lines of dialogue there that I hadn't heard before. So yeah, like I said, the stuff with like Jefferson Davis's party where Miles isn't there and they're like, why didn't he come? And that stuff I was a bit like, it's okay. It's doing like your standard character building stuff. But in retrospect, once the movie had finished, at the time I might not have enjoyed it, but thinking back to it, knowing what the ending was with Gwen's whole arc with her father, and then the whole thing with Jefferson, like I'm just flicking through stills of the movie on a copy that I'll not say anything that'll get me in trouble, but there's a great moment where Jefferson holds up a cup to a mural of his brother Aaron, which says, rest in power, and it's got him spray painted on the wall. And even things like that pay off down the line when you travel to the alternate reality at the end where you can see that mural's been done up for Jefferson instead. And just thinking back on it, little things like that where I was like, oh, this is, it's not as good as it could be. That kind of elevated it. And obviously you have the great scenes mixed in between that, such as Gwen and Miles sitting upside down on that building's ledge, and just kind of, it's very character building at the start and it's not as focused on the multiverse. But then once you hit Nueva York, ooh, crazy. Just everything just hits the fan. And I think we all knew from the trailers as well that this was going to be a massive moment in the film as well, because I tell you what, Greg, when that first trailer dropped and it had all those different Spider-Men in that one shot, hanging, I just thought, you know what, I hate this job. I'm going to have to break down all of these. But seeing it, not having to break it down, brilliant. And then obviously you lead into the cameos and the cells, and there was so many. My favourite one there, you obviously had the PS4 Spider-Man, but there was a little green sprite 8-bit figure next to him, and that was the Green Goblin on the Atari 2600.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, just seeing that, I was like, they've put so much effort into this. And then they obviously pay that off with the Donald Glover appearance, which I'm starting to really like the live action mixing with this stuff. And we'll talk in a bit about what we think they could do after Beyond the Spider-Verse. But I think it worked really well, just seeing, Mrs. Chen was obviously live action, Donald Glover as well. One of the best Easter eggs ever.
Yeah, I thought the Donald Glover one was That was the one that I was audibly like, oh shit. I mean, it works even for people who don't even realize how big of an Easter egg that is.
Yeah.
because you're like, it's Donald Glover, even if you have
Yeah.
no idea, if you've completely forgot even who he was in Spider-Man Homecoming, to say the least, because that's not even where it started, obviously. But if you just like know like Childish Gambino or Donald Glover, it's already exciting enough as it is just to see him there. But for the Spider-Man fans who have followed this journey for years, when it's like, there was a time where Donald Glover came across like he was much younger, and he came across kind of like a nerdier, dorkier dude, and now he's like really cool with his beard and all that shit. So to see like the evolution, but to hone in on like that Donald Glover love, but then all the tying in with, and I believe you did cover it in your video
Yeah.
about like tying in with like community, and then so he was the inspiration for Miles,
Yeah.
and so he was like Miles is Donald Glover by proxy in a lot of ways, like
Yeah.
it's so cool. And then how he could have been Prowler in the MCU. There's still a scenario where he could end up being the Prowler in the MCU if they wanted to. But I'm happy that they got that in there. And it would be cool one day if Donald Glover was able to actually be a little more creatively involved. I do have a question.
Mm.
I'm wondering from your experience with the movie, because I did have some pacing issues when I was first watching it, and for me it was coming from the fact that you would get like a scene with the spot, and it was so kinetic and so funny and so energetic, and then we'd really slow it down, and I
Yeah.
wasn't sure if that was like my own personal thing where I was like, I'm just recalibrating my brain and heart right now because I had such a high, and now I'm like, oh, I gotta really go to the drama now. And then for you, it seemed like you had some of that effect of, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that you've been told by everyone just how it's like the greatest freaking thing in the world. So
Yeah.
you kind of were like, okay, when's going to be that great thing that everyone kept telling me about? And I'm like 10 minutes in, it's still not great. It's still not great. Cause I've had that for sure, where
Yeah.
people have like told me how great it is. And I just keep looking out for it. And then I'm finding stuff that I'm not finding super great. So then it's kind of going down in my book because of that level of hype. Was that kind of playing into your feelings when you were watching it?
Yeah. I just those early scenes were good, but they felt like they were sort of very in line with what we'd already seen in the first film.
Sure.
And there
Yeah.
were some different animation styles, sure, like the Vulture being a Renaissance painting and stuff like that. Sorry, like it was more like based on a Leonardo da Vinci sketch, really, and because obviously Leonardo invented the helicopter, they say, because he drew one on a bit of paper. So I could see that, and it was good, but it wasn't really, building, like going beyond that first film in terms of the animation and the style and just how kinetic it was. There were some parts like where the spots sort of popping in and out of places, and that's really good. But then there were more kind of subdued scenes that I felt they went on for quite a while, like the party scene on the roof, and then when Miles is talking with his mother when Gwen runs off, and I thought that was good, but when you kind of have your expectations set as this is just crazy, this is going to be kinetic, dynamic, all over the place in terms of animation, and you've got scenes that are very low key, not much really going on in terms of, you know, uh, explosiveness. They don't feel like they're vibrant and popping off the screen. And there was quite a lot of those scenes early on, like in the school and stuff like that. And I was kind of thinking, when's this gonna get crazy? And then it gets crazy. But yeah, just those early couple of scenes on a second viewing, I really did like them. But in terms of it's always the case with these films as well, where you get, you know, movie studios nowadays, they let social media reactions go quite early. So you see those, and that builds your anticipation for a film, which can be good, but it can also be detrimental to it, which I think happened here. Had I not known, I might not have been as bad on that
Yeah.
first act. But like I said, they redeem it all in the second and third act and retroactively make those early acts better, because I can kind of breathe a sigh of relief now and be like, well, I know something's crazy coming, instead of being like how I was at the cinema, which is like, is this all it's going to be? Is this as crazy as it gets?
Yeah, yeah. Out of the new Spider-Mans, who was your favorite that you I mean, like the main new Spider-Mans. I mean, there's so many to choose from. Like Spider-Punk, Spider-Man,
Yeah,
India, Jessica Drew,
Spider-Punk. Yeah,
Spider-Punk.
love
Yeah.
Spider-Punk. Obviously, he's British, got a punk attitude. You know the guy. And I just love how Daniel Kaluuya, there's a lot of things I could tell that Americans wouldn't get. And just because the accent was so hard to understand, it was even hard for me to understand sometimes. They did a great thing, and I don't know if this was intentional, but when he's first introduced in Mumbattan, when they go to the Collider,
Mhm.
Miles says something like, "Can you guys understand this guy?" And I'm sure that all of Daniel Kaluuya's lines at that point were purposely like I couldn't understand them.
Yeah.
So I don't think Americans could. But
The,
even
the,
throughout the film, there was constantly like bits where he'd be saying something, and I'd think, there's no way Greg understood that. He ain't getting that Cockney rhyming slang.
the audience that I was with, there was stuff that I definitely missed. But the audience that I was like, he has that line where when everything's like collapsing in on itself, and he goes, "It's a metaphor for capitalism," which is it's such a funny ass line.
Yeah.
But I didn't catch that because like half the theater really laughed, and the other half of us were like, "What did you say?" But my,
Yeah.
my
Stop
wife was
laughing.
next to me, and she caught it, and she was cracking up, and I was like, "What? What?"
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes there are certain lines that are a little bit harder to catch. But yeah, I think I love the animation on him so much, where he even there's like symbolism to the way he's animated
Yeah.
that feels like the anarchist rebel as well. Like he's just not as smooth. It's more like jagged and rough throughout, and it feels like it's like constantly changing. Uh, Very much resembling him, and I think this movie had a exceptional grip on that with hopping between the different mediums, like you were talking about with the live action, and then going into the different worlds as well, and being able to carry that over even down to Gwen's world, feeling like how it looks with her Spider Gwen comics. I think it's
Yeah.
really cool how they did this melding. And one thing that I find myself in weird defense of nowadays, because I've seen some people say like it can't be the best Spider-Man movie because it's not live action; it's animated, and I think it's a silly argument, and I wonder if that some people say that because perhaps they feel that because it's animated, there's a lack of tangibility for them, which I don't feel that way, but that's like the one reasoning I could find behind it. Uh, to me, though, the animation is the only way you can make this movie, this Spider-Man
Definitely.
movie, is an animation. You can't make this in live action. You just simply cannot do it. The voice is part of the voice is the animation, and so to me, I'm like, no, I would totally freaking compare this to Spider-Man: No Way Home. I would compare it to Spider-Man 2 from Sam Raimi. Why not? When I'm putting it up against the other Spider-Man movies, and I do think that maybe the first movie had a smoother because the first movie doesn't have like just crazy kinetic energy and then we're really slowing it down. There was more of a gradual build in the first one, which
Yeah.
allowed you to get into the craziness. So I think the first movie has that. But for me, do you know where you would put this between the Spider-Man movies? I don't know if you've like talked about that
I
yet. Or at least
said
between, do
this.
you like it more than Into the Spider-Verse? I don't know where you'd rank it.
Yeah, I like it more than Into the Spider Verse.
Okay.
I did say in my review that I know I'll have recency bias on it, so I don't want to. Because I said like No Way Home was my favorite Spider-Man movie, and then it's gone back to Spider-Man 2 slash Into the Spider Verse. So I don't want, but I mean, it's up there. It's top 3 or 4 easily.
Yeah.
And you're right. You're completely right about it being. You couldn't pull this off in live action. The animation style, it adds an extra layer to everything. Like you were talking before about Spider Punk being, I can see the Sex Pistols album cover in his design. There's bits where he turns like black and white, and it looks like how the Queen appears on God Save the Queen, and there's just little things like that, where they've clearly researched and went over so many little things that not everyone's gonna get, but it just builds upon the character and it adds an extra layer to it. I think when he was telling his backstory as well, there was like it was using montages and so on, and it just worked so well. Like little references that not everyone's gonna get, but you can't do that in live action because you're taking animation styles and so on, and even just for the amount of action that happens in it, I think would be very difficult to pull off in live action. You could pull off the party scenes, yeah, no problem. But that speeding train scene where there's hundreds of different Spider-Men all piled on top of each other chasing after Miles, when he's swinging through all the archways and stuff, and there's T-Rexes popping up and so on, you couldn't do that in live action, I don't think. Or if you did, it would look stupid. It would look too unrealistic, and you would lose the authenticity of the film. So yeah, I think you just keep, this shows why animation is as valuable as live action is, because they've just done incredible things with it. It's like when you see really good stop motion, the work, you can see it comes off the screen, how much work's gone into this, and to devalue it by saying, "Oh well, it's not live action," I think that shows you're just ignorant, and you
Yeah.
you need to watch more animation. Yeah,
It might be harder to put it together because it's animation too, actually. Now
yeah.
that yeah, like you have to
But
be
you've got
so
yeah,
meticulous.
you've got to design so much stuff, and there's things that you think wouldn't work, like different animation styles in the same scene and stuff. Like I never thought they could do live action alongside this, but they still do, and they pull it off. And there's so many things that shouldn't really work,
Yeah.
but the fact that they somehow bring it all together, it's incredible. It's like when Who Framed Roger Rabbit came out. You know what I mean? It's that level of taking things to the next point where you can see how stuff's progressing, and you can show this on its own to someone who isn't really a fan of superhero movies or might not be a fan of animated movies, and they'll be able to find stuff in it that they can appreciate.
Yeah.
Uh,
There's a lot of live
yeah,
action mix in this, especially when you're like pulling over footage from the older like Spider-Man movies, like Andrew Garfield's Uncle
yeah,
Captain Stacy death moment and stuff. Yeah,
it's
there's a
got
good.
heart. Yeah, it's got heart. It's got really good characters in it. Yes, Miguel O'Hara, he was who I was going to talk about next. How do you think they utilized him? Obviously, the Spot, I thought that they did a lot with the Spot as well. The Spot's been a very goofy comic book villain. I've actually got the first issue that he ever
Oh
appeared
no
in,
way! Really?
and I want to sell it now. Get rid of it. Could be worth millions. But yeah, I thought he was a good villain, but he wasn't the person who was really getting my heart racing. Obviously, towards the end when he turns all black with the little white dots on, and he appears in Miles' world, I thought, oh crap, this is big.
Yeah.
But
I think
Miguel as a
he's.
villain, I thought worked really well.
I think the Spot will be the Beyond the Spider-Verse main villain.
Do you think?
I feel like yeah, I think he'll be the main villain there. I feel like they'll probably have some type of resolve with when it comes to Miguel because we see with Gwen that after Captain Stacy, her dad, doesn't like there's no what's the ramification called when what happens in Spider-Man India's world after Captain
Yeah,
after
it's some quantum. I don't know,
some
some
quantum
stupid
black
science
hole
name.
shit thingy. Yeah, that
Like
they
a
have to
canon
bring.
event, they call it disrupting.
Yeah, but the,
But
the canon event doesn't feel disrupted. It doesn't look like it's been disrupted after
yeah,
Stacy decides to not wear the badge
yeah,
anymore. Um, so I think there'll be some type of resolve with Miguel and them because what I loved what they did with Miguel is they didn't paint him as a full-on villain in this movie. And he is antagonistic. He is a threat. But what this movie I thought did exceptionally well. One of my favorite things is that if you can do this, especially in a sci-fi discussion, where it's like this is not real, but I am so believing this argument and this conversation. Like I liken it to in Jurassic Park when Jeff Goldblum and Dr. Hammond are arguing over if they should have created the park or not, if they should have created the dinosaurs, and the way they have Miles and Miguel arguing with each other about, Miles wants to leave and save his dad, and that he has this information, and Miguel's obviously very much opposed to it, and he's convinced everyone else too that these canon events are necessary. And so you have this like looming, dejected energy from all the spider people who, some of them like Gwen, who have just decided to accept yeah, I'm just waiting for my dad to eventually die. It's really tragic. It's really bleak actually. And I thought the debate was so well done because obviously I'm on Miles's side. Obviously I'm there with Miles like, "Yeah, I want you to save your dad, of course, and you're our hero." and then I would have the thoughts of, but what if Miguel is right? Like, what
Yeah.
if Miguel? Yeah, maybe Miguel's just being like, he's got to be a hard ass about it because this is such a weight to bear, and he's got to be stern and disciplined. But what if he is the one who's right and Jefferson does have to die? Like, what if by saving Jefferson, Moore goes wrong? Because he's great at being ruthless, and he says some words that really cut to the core. Like when he is ripping into Miles on that train, saying like, you're abnormal, you were not meant to be. Like the way he says it is pretty much saying like you shouldn't even exist in such a like you don't matter. You've robbed someone else of something. Like he has ways of just being so insulting. And then you think about some of the things he's trying to do, and you're like, but he might be right though. Like he might be right in what he's setting out to do. And so I think they illustrate such a fantastic debate, whereas Spot is a little more, no pun intended, he's very much black and white about the whole thing. I'm just going to dominate and kill and stuff. Whereas Miguel at least has an objective that is really rooted in saving and preserving the multiverse. So
I feel there's more going on with Miguel than he lets on.
Really?
I kind of feel like there's, I don't think we got the full story with the world-ending thing. Because Miles is an anomaly. I've had to re-record me saying an anomaly so many times the last week. Yeah. I've just been messing it up so much. So Miles is an anomaly. Got it. And his world didn't change or alter and end, which he admits to. He obviously had lots of different canon events changing in that world as well. He saves Spider-Man India's police lieutenant.
Chief,
I forgot.
Police
Inspector, captain. I think they say it's over there. Someone will let me know. They've got a different. Obviously, we use the term inspector in the UK, but I forgot exactly which one it is in India. Anyway, they save that, and obviously they show they can save that world. The Captain Stacy thing happens. He doesn't. Nothing. The world doesn't end there, and I think that they're just kind of getting. Miguel's got things in place to basically shut these black holes down before things get too crazy, but they might not even get crazy. You know what I mean? It might just be all an act, and he might not be telling us the whole truth. And my editor, Matt, he's so switched on to comics. He was saying the entire time he was thinking that this is a character who's actually called Morlun from the Spider-Verse story. So what it is there's vampires. I'm butchering this. So there's vampires. There's a vampire called Morlun who feasts, him and his other people, they feast on the Spider-Verse and webs and stuff. And the vampires,
I know what you're talking
got fangs
about.
and stuff.
Mm-hmm,
And their plan was to bring together all the different spider people from across the multiverse and then eat them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I butchered that story. It's probably not right. I need to reread it. My memory's terrible. But yeah, that would be a good little twist. And they even look a bit similar. So maybe it's something like that. Because he obviously also
for Madam Web at one point. I remember that.
Yeah, he's also stepped in the place of that other Spider 2099. So we were thinking that he might have taken over his place and just be masquerading as him.
But he
But
still
you
has
don't know.
Spider-Man powers. Can they do that?
It's a movie, Greg. It's not, none of it's real, so they can do whatever they need the writer to do. What do you mean they're all on strike so they can't change it? But yeah, loved that train bit when everything hits the fan. Then you have the Peter B. Parker. This was one of the criticisms that my friend Bamalam had. He was saying, Peter B. Parker not really that necessary to the plot, and that they maybe should have just brought him in at the end when Gwen was recruiting it. When Gwen was Cottonmouth. You know what I'm saying? Gwen was recruiting everyone at the end,
right?
And they should have just brought him in there. Which, you know what? When I was doing my breakdown, realized at the end that I hadn't even mentioned Peter B. Parker at any point in the breakdown up until that final scene when I talked about who was with Gwen.
Oh, really? I didn't even miss him. Like that was interesting compared to Into the Spider-Verse, because it was my first time seeing Miles, and then you see like there's a Peter Parker that's advertised in the trailer. So I was like, I wonder when Peter Parker's like. I was anxious to see Peter Parker the first time I saw Into the Spider-Verse, and of course I loved the dynamic between, like, you don't have any dynamic like that exists here, but the one that they have with Miles and Peter B. Parker and Into the Spider-Verse. But yeah, I wasn't even thinking about Peter B. Parker until he showed up. That I was like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, Peter B. Parker, which to me, I think speaks good volumes to the evolution of this, because I cared. I was significantly more emotionally, and I liked Miles a lot in the first one. I really did. I was significantly more emotionally invested because he's just more fleshed out. He's got more of a character journey, and something that's
Yeah.
more unique as well in this one. So I really liked him a lot. But yeah, Peter B. Parker he's just kind of, he was like extra dumb to me at certain points. That's what I don't, certain thoughts. He's such a shitty parent. Like, he's such a terrible parent that I was
Yeah.
a little
What?
bit
Like, why you
distracted by
take?
how dumb he was.
Yeah. Taking your kid there. I don't know if I would. Not on top of a speeding training. Definitely get in trouble. But
Lying to his
of
wife about
course,
it.
yeah. After that train scene, it's revealed. Miles has led everyone away from the base so that he can go back there. I was like, yes, brilliant,
Genius.
genius. He electrocutes Miguel, leaps off the train, disappears, goes invisible. Crazy, loved it. The entire scene. We're doing a perfect scene breakdown on that scene alone, talking about how thematically it lines up with the film, because obviously you have these adults throughout the film that are constantly telling Miles like what he has to be. And then his teacher at the start gives him a blank piece of paper and says, "I don't know your story." And the film is very much about his parents telling him he has to act a certain way, the Spot telling him he has to act a certain way, Gwen saying you can't come with me, Miguel saying you're an anomaly. We don't want you as part of our society. You were never meant to be. And that's very much the moment where the dynamic switches and he gets to choose what he wants to be. And he is going to save his dad. He doesn't care about all those, the personification of peer pressure, I called it, which is when all the Spider-Men appear around him. You've got Josh Keaton's spectacular Spider-Man being like, "You've got to let your dad die, mate. We've got to progress the plot. We've got to keep selling comics." So that's the moment where he shocks it and shows that this is Miles, and that is the thing with Miles in general. Like, you'll still see it today, where lots of people argue that Miles isn't his own character, and that he's just always in Spider-Man's shadow. And that happened when he was created as well. People were demanding that Brian Michael Bendis bring back Peter Parker as the main Spider-Man, but he's very much justifying that he is a Spider-Man that's going to stick around. You should follow him, and this is why he can do things differently. He doesn't have to stick to the story we've heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times before. They make it clear in the movie, this is something that every Spider-Man has to go through, so get used to hearing the same old story. And Miles is going against that. And that moment where it all builds to that, I think, is absolutely incredible. And then what he does is he goes back to the machine, because he doesn't have a way to actually travel through the multiverse. He's got that guest pass. He doesn't actually have one of those bands where he can do it. And he gets back to the machine. It goes, we're going to tell you, it scans your DNA and finds out what universe you're from and then sends you back there. And the big twist is that because the spider bit him from Earth 42, that his DNA is actually now containing stuff from Earth 42. So that's where he's sent back. And I'm sure there's actually, if you rewatch the movie, when the Spot's telling the origins of the spider, you can catch the back of Miles's head with braids in it. Really great seeing that. So yeah, what was the twist like? How did he react? At what point did you realize? Because I'll tell you when I realized pretty early on, when he was in the room and he had a green coat on with a purple hoodie, and Rio had green eyes. And I was like, her eyes have changed color,
Okay.
and that he's wearing the Prowler's colors as well.
I did not notice it with that. I think that whole sequence that you're talking about is truly brilliant. Like, the entire, when Miguel is explaining how all these canon events work, and even down to when he tells him how he's this anomaly, and just the whole sequence as well with him running away from the Spider-Man, because you're absolutely right that he comes into his own identity in this movie even more so. That's what I mean. Like, oh, I didn't even miss Peter B. Parker whatsoever. I just wanted Miles' journey. And like the sequence of him having to outwit and outmaneuver his way away from a bunch of Spider-Men was nothing short of exhilarating to me. It was so exciting from beginning because you've seen Spider-Man go up against so many villains, but you haven't seen him go up against a bunch of versions of himself. And
Yeah.
he's like working together with them. We've seen a bunch of, but he's in full on versus escape mode, and I thought that was so freaking exciting. And I think the writing of it is great because when Miguel's on the train, because they're talking about that one sequence when you find out that twist, when Miguel's on the train and he is saying, you weren't supposed to. Yeah, is that the scene when he tells him that I only saw it the one time. That's the scene when he says like someone else. There's a world that exists without a Spider-Man because of him.
Yeah.
In the
That was
moment,
it, yeah.
I was so focused on how, and I think a lot of us were. I was so focused on how this is affecting Miguel's emotions, on what you're doing to this kid right now, and how you're making him feel worthless and undeserving. That was where I wasn't even thinking about, well, I wonder what that world is where there's no Spider-Man. Like I had no thoughts about that. I was so focused on Miguel's emotions. That's
The
why I think
Venomverse.
yeah, that's where it could be that. I was so focused on what Miguel was experiencing in the core while they were delivering important ass exposition at the same time. And to me, that's like brilliant writing because you're so wrapped up in the emotional investment. So when they do get to the scene with the mom, it was right away when she says, "Who's Spider-Man?" And because a lot of us, I heard a lot of people in the crowd going, "What?" And once I heard people going, "What?" That's immediately when I was like, I think I was very audible during the. I normally try to, as much as I do reactions on my channel, I try to reserve myself in an actual theater, but I was very audible during this experience. And I did go, "Oh, he's in the other universe." Just said it out loud.
Yeah.
I was like, "He's in the wrong universe." Like, and I thought that was a brilliant twist, leading to some very ominous moments as well, because it should be something that it's. I just love the complex. The movie's so complex in all the right ways. There's so much happening, but it's complex in every way that's a compliment. Like he's seen his uncle Aaron. You've got these vibes of that's his uncle Aaron. He misses him. He loves him, but this is also very threatening and incredibly menacing at the same time when he is popping in there. And of course, as the revealing of the world, and now in this world, his dad's dead. I think that whole reveal and the finale moment was excellent because some people I've heard have said that they don't they I've heard it expressed quite a bit more so than ever now that they're unsatisfied with that it ends on such a cliffhanger that they feel like there's not a proper conclusion. But I feel like the proper conclusion, Miguel does have his arc. He does have his character arc, but I think it really comes with Gwen. That's the complete. There's a reason the movie starts off with her and then it ends with her as well because this movie is just as much hers, and that's where the complete character arc comes into the story. So the whole part two of it being of the completion is with her, but then the completion for Miles' story will come in the form of Beyond the Spider-Verse, I think.
Definitely. No, 100% agree. I don't know why people complain about films ending on cliffhangers a lot of the time as well. When Infinity War released, I tell you what, there was a guy who I used to work with actually rang me up angry after it. Like, what the hell is that about? Like, what? They've just ended it when everyone's dead. I was like, well, they're making another movie, mate. You just need to chill. It's coming, but it's it's Empire Strikes Back. You know what I mean? They're doing the second film cliffhanger. I thought it was great, and I thought that they basically silenced of the lambs the finals that scene with Miles's mother, because what I mean by silenced of the lambs is you have one scene going on somewhere, they set it up so it looks like another scene's happening at the same place, and then you realize that they're two different scenes at different locations. So Clarice in Silence of the Lambs, you've got the SWAT team. Clarice is going investigating stuff. You've got the SWAT team going to Buffalo Bill's house. You cut to the inside, you hear the door ringing, the SWAT team's outside ringing the door, blah, blah, blah. Buffalo Bill finally goes upstairs. They cut it so it looks like the SWAT team standing outside, and then he opens the door and Clarice is there. Now, how they do it in Across the Spider-Verse is that they have Miles telling his mother, Miguel's, like, we're gonna get to his house. Gwen swings outside of it. She starts looking in the window, peeking around to see, and you think that you're gonna see them having the conversation, and then that's when you realize that, oh, these are the same location but in two different universes. Really good. And then obviously you have Uncle Aaron and then I'm learning that his dad's dead when you see the mural on the wall, and then you're kind of wondering, they keep talking about Miles and giving little hints towards him. Aaron's like, come on, we're going to be late. We've got a job tonight. And then, hits a fan.
Yeah.
Miles gets knocked out, wakes up on the punching bag, just like how Peter B. Parker did in that first film. He's talking to Aaron. You're kind of getting the impression that Aaron's the Prowler. And then when he punches the punching bag and it just like explodes out the back, I was thinking, has he just punched Miles' head off? But no, something drops down from the shadows. Prowler looking bad guy. Then it all unmasks and he goes something like, my name is Miles Morales. He says it more Spanishly. I'll get in trouble for saying Spanishly, but you know what I mean. I'm trying not... I apologize for my use of terminology there, but he's got more of a Spanish accent, which calls back to those teacher bits at the start when he was failing Spanish, but he was, that's obviously because his dad died and he got more of an influence from his mother on the Spanish side of stuff. Just little touches like that. Really, really well thought out. And I think he's going to be the villain of the next film. I think you're going to start off with Miles escaping the punching bag. They're going to have a big chase. Aaron's just become aware that his brother's alive in another universe. And I was thinking about this more and more. I am dropping a predictions video very soon, but the more I thought about it, Aaron in the first movie and Jefferson didn't really make up. So obviously they went their separate ways, and then Aaron died. Now, in this alternate universe, you've got something on the opposite side of it where Aaron and Jefferson probably didn't make up, and then Jefferson died. So you've got these two characters from across the multiverse. And someone mentioned it in a comment. I can't remember who it is. I do shout you out in the video, though, so keep an eye out for that. But they said that they think Jefferson's going to sacrifice himself in the other universe to save... No, sorry, Aaron's going to sacrifice himself in the other universe to save Jefferson. And that'll be him kind of redeeming him. And then they'll also get that moment where the two meet and they're like, well, in my universe, you died and we never got to say how much we loved each other. And it's like, I love you, brother. It's like, I love you too, brother. And then he sacrifices himself. So I think that the Miles we see at the end is going to go to the other universe. So Prowler Miles will... I think Gwen's going to show up with all the spider buddies. They've all got bands so they can travel the multiverse. They're going to show up to rescue Miles, and that's when Prowler Miles is going to get his hand on one of the bands that allows you to travel through the multiverse, and then he's going to go to the Jefferson verse, we'll call it, and then he's to see his dad, basically, because he's obviously lost his dad. He's went down a really dark path through losing him, so I think he'll want to go there, and he might end up fighting the Spot to save Miles's dad.
None of your story plot ideas are anything to do with the Spot, though. You don't really feel like the Spot's going to have any more ramifications.
I think Miguel's going to fight the Spot, but Miguel is in a precarious situation. And I talk about this in the theories video because obviously the Spot's getting more and more powerful. He's going down he's going throughout the multiverse, wrecking things, completely destroying stuff. He has the power to bring the entire multiverse down. So Miguel, sod all the Moreland theories, right? We'll keep it like he's just Miguel. Keep it simple. Miguel can either allow the Spot to continue and just keep going, kill Jefferson, and probably go off and destroy the rest of the multiverse, or he can stop the Spot, but in doing that, it will save Jefferson, which will go against his entire ideology of canon events have to happen. Right. So Miguel's in a lose-lose situation as well. They've got lots of things they can do in this next film. So I think, yeah, we know Miguel's near where the Spot's just arrived at because they were staking out Miles's place. So I think they're going to, in one universe, you're going to have Miles going against Prowler Miles. And then in this other universe, you're going to have Miguel going against the Spot, and then they're going to all convene at maybe the center of the multiverse where every reality is coming together.
I kind of feel like I wonder if it might become a little more simplified than that. I love where
Yeah,
you're going with the idea of Jefferson. What's great about this is you really can't. A lot of times you can go, well, I'm definitely going to go down this path. You really can't, you know, be fully certain which path it's going to go down, especially with
yeah,
the movie, this sequel, which had so many surprises. Like, I don't think anyone predicted any of this, of what would happen in this movie, especially in its like last half hour. Because it's crazy when you look back on it, how the trailers, especially the official trailer, it does show you a lot of the plot technically,
hmm,
right down to like Miguel and Miles on the train and the confrontation they're having there and him saying like I'm sick of people telling me what I should be. So they do show you a decent amount in that official trailer, yet it's still such an unpredictable film. And here I'm like, okay, there could also be a very simple way it all concludes. Maybe there is a resolve between, like, let's say Miguel is just Miguel, and there ends up being a resolve there, and everyone has to somehow unite together to take down Spot. It could be
yeah.
something like as simplistic as that, because I'm like, I don't know how Miguel could take down Spot just alone on his own, because Spot just seems like massively powerful,
Oh,
and I
he's got
think
the
we got to
rest of
talk
the
about.
Spider Society.
Yeah, that's true. He could still. It's like, what would they do though? To do it.
Just go
Do you
crazy with the animation, get everyone in.
just throw it over there, just
Yeah,
punch,
because
punch,
they need
punch,
that
punch, punch,
crazy
punch.
animation scene.
Yeah, yeah. I loved Spot a lot. You have more of an emotional, I don't know, preconceived notion of how it would all go down. But did you personally like him? I thought he was great because
Yeah,
it's
I loved
rare
his
to me,
arc.
especially when you can take a villain who starts off as like villain of the week and is just
Hmm.
kind of goofy, and then watch as he progresses into something truly terrifying
Yeah,
without it being silly. It's
yeah,
actually scary. And I feel like in live action it would come across silly. But here it's actually scary when he does
yeah.
become this dark, demonic void. And using him as a way to have fun with going into the different multiverses as well, and having him be a villain, because a lot of the Spider-Man villains, part of the joke is how a lot of them are like scientists turned bad who have a relationship prior with Peter Parker, usually, in some regard. And to have it be something where it is a specific vendetta with Spider-Man, and how this version of this Miles is actually kind of partially responsible for how he came to be, and also telling it in this like body horror tale. You do feel like there's a sense of tragedy to him that you are kind of laughing at. So watching his progression, and on top of that too, the music that they compliment him with, I just feel like this movie is so that like it is the
Yeah,
most, it is the best Spider-Man movie to me. It is so
yeah.
well thought out on every front.
Score's
Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, I love the Spot in it. I think his arc's really good. He starts off as quite. I mean, this is a supervillain origin story as well. This entire trilogy, because when you find out how he ties in with that first film, you're watching, two people in this universe rising up against each other. He keeps going on about how he's Miles' nemesis, and yeah, he sort of is in a way because he obviously caused the thing that created him, and
exactly.
with the spider bite, and then Miles created the Spot by intervening. So they've got this really, they are tied together really nicely. And to see him go from this goofy guy robbing ATMs, I won't say ATM machine, I'll say ATMs.
Yeah,
To go from that to what he is at the end, where he's just like this, drops down and the music going, so
yeah.
good. Yeah,
Oh my god! And you said the ATM because it's Spider-Man India, and I loved him. I did not see.
yeah,
I saw that they released a promo when I was doing my edit for our review. I saw that they released a promo that introduces him, and I did not watch that prior to seeing it. So I had no idea like how Spider-Man India would be, and I thought he was such a wonderful breath of fresh air because so much of Spider-Man comes with like the responsibility,
Yeah.
and the tragicness, the weight of being Spider-Man, and for him to just like swing onto the scene and be like, being Spider-Man's easy, like
Yeah. Yeah.
how fun it would be to be Spider-Man. And then even like the India type world that they have there, and then shouting it out, making fun, but also highlighting, and I thought was an absolute delight. And that was a character that I didn't have like expectations necessarily, but that had that effect of when you like see Spider-Man Noir in the first one or something like that,
Mm.
like like those they introduce these characters that make you, because they don't advertise, like Spider-Man Noir and I'm totally blank on his name. Which one's John Mulaney's again in the first one?
Spider-Ham.
Spider-Ham, goddamn, yeah. And like Spider-Ham in the first one, they don't have any of them here in this film, and they were such a highlight of the first one, and yet they give you these new ones. And so I think this movie, it really does excel at making you so invested in even the new characters and loving them that you're not
Yeah.
even missing some of the people who were not present. And a lot of times that's a sequel problem. A sequel issue is it's missing the presence of this. You can feel that this person is missing. You can feel the air of this, like the missing presence of this individual. And this movie doesn't suffer from that at all. I think it's probably one of the best sequels that's ever been done, due
Yeah.
to that
The,
fact. Yeah. What'd you think of Jessica
the,
Drew though? I don't hear enough people talk about her.
yeah, I mean, she was all right. She was kind of like, I don't know. Yeah, I thought she was fine. She didn't really have much. She was sort of like Gwen's mother, really, because obviously Gwen doesn't have a mother. It's not that we met. I'm not sure how the workings of that universe are. But yeah, she kind of acted as that, being like a guiding figure for her. And then when she's doing stuff she shouldn't be, she gets it because she understands love. She's sort of the opposite to Miles's mother almost, who, she's trying to be strict, tell Gwen how to act, but when she sees they really like each other, she's willing to turn a blind eye to it. So yeah, I mean, I thought she was all right. I wasn't blown away by her, to be honest. Uh,
What What'd you think
yeah,
about
she
the all the parenting themes that were? This movie's laced, littered
yeah,
with
sluts.
parenting themes throughout, even right down to Jessica Drew at
Yeah,
the beginning being pregnant.
yeah, being
And
pregnant. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and it works well because you're seeing the relationship from both sides. So you're getting really well developed parents, but you're also getting really well developed children and having to deal with their parents who are trying to look after them. But obviously they have these incredible abilities. You've got Peter B. Parker, who's a parent, Miguel, who's obviously lost his family. Lots of different themes, and obviously Miles as well. You see what effect it has. They constantly talk about. I'm sure Spider Punk says at one point, "Oh, you must have a nice family," something like that. He's like, "Yeah,
mhm,
they're okay." But then we see, like, I think Prowler Miles is going to show Miles exactly, how good his family are and what would
yeah,
happen if he didn't have them, which I think is a really great arc. So yeah, I think that all works well. Going back to Spider-Man India, I didn't get to talk about him because you weren't delegating properly and you didn't even ask me. I think one of the things he shows is
sorry.
that how good the dialogue is. The so normally in a live action film, obviously when you're on set and you're interacting with people, you can improvise and throw little lines here and there. But all of the lines, they would have been written to be recorded in a recording studio where you're probably not interacting with all the other actors as much. And for them to still have like these little quips, it's written like they're improvising almost. And just having like the little things like, why do they call it chai tea? It's just chai. Just stuff like that.
Yeah,
There's so many little bits where they would have written it, but it's delivered flawlessly. I mean, we know how difficult it is reading from a script sometimes into a mic. You sound totally different. Your delivery's a lot different. But they just nailed it. Every aspect of it, really. Everything they set out to do, they did it.
they did it
Stepped up
all.
the animation. Score was incredible. Character development amazing. Just crazy. Big twist at the end. You nailed it. Guys nailed it, and we'll love it.
What'd you think about? We were like I feel we're like an hour 20 something minutes into here, but I do want to know. I'm gonna redelegate. What do you think about? You didn't really touch on Gwen personally in this
Yeah,
discussion so far.
I thought Gwen was great. Really, really. I've always thought Gwen's a great character in these films. Yeah, she's actually got stuff to do. You know, Gwen Stacy. When you're dealing with Gwen Stacy, it's very easy to fall into underusing that character and killing her off before you actually get to develop her. Don't know if you guys have read the Ultimate Spider-Man run, but I tell you what, the way they handled Gwen Stacy in that, especially towards the end with her death, I was fuming. I was like, nah, I love this comic so far, but the way they handle her death in that is kind of just so bad. She doesn't get a chance to get properly developed, and just as you're really getting attached to her, they just kill her out of the blue. And it's not with the whole Brooklyn Bridge thing. A clone of Peter that's becoming Carnage. Just she goes home one night because she's living with Peter and Aunt May. She goes home one night and he's there instead, and he just kills her, and that's it. Peter doesn't even see it or anything. It's really weirdly handled. And you can run into the pitfall with Gwen Stacy. You know, Amazing Spider-Man. Say whatever you want about those films, but they handled the Gwen stuff really well. The relationship in this film as well. Sony know what they're doing when it comes to Gwen. She's a really fleshed out character.
They really do. They really know. You can't underscore that enough. They know how to handle Gwen.
Yeah, she's great, and you feel the relationship between her and Miles. I put her and Miles above Peter Parker and Gwen. You know what I mean? Like Gwen and Peter Parker are the classic tragic couple, but I put Miles and Gwen above them.
Immediately I was going back as you're talking about Gwen. I was immediately making me go to one of my favorite adaptations of Gwen was actually her relationship with Peter Parker in the Spectacular Spider-Man show. Did you see Spectacular Spider-Man?
Bits of it, yeah. I mean, I forget everything that I don't need to remember as soon as it's over.
I know
exactly. What movie did we watch? I watched a movie the other week, Fast X. Knew it at the time, couldn't tell you what the hell happened in it now. No idea. Yeah. If you asked me a question about that film, I'd no idea what happened in it.
It's the pressure with trailer reactions that I struggle with. I'm like, oh shit. What happened? But Spectacular Spider-Man, you know, like I love the Donald Glover cameo. And I really think the way how they in this show they do a great parallel between the kind of unique dynamic because you know like Mary Jane is you know hot and shit where you have Gwen who's a nerd as well, and I think the Spectacular Spider-Man show really nailed that. And Spectacular Spider-Man, I've seen the whole thing, and that to me was a moment on screen that really meant a lot to me. It meant more to me than the Donald Glover one because I love Spectacular Spider-Man show. I got the DVDs of it. It was given to me by my friend Aaron, and I was not told that it just suddenly stopped. So I did have the feeling of, wow, what a great season 2 finale. Like I like it more than the 90s show. It's such a great season 2 finale. Can't wait to watch the next one. I was trying to find it. I was like, what? Just ended.
It's over.
So for me, that was a cameo that spoke volumes, and especially like really they have the Spider-Man PS4 cameo with Yuri Lowenthal, and he does have a line, but it's kind of obscured. Whereas they really let Spectacular Spider-Man actually be front and center for just a few seconds and say some poignant shit, and so that was a cameo that really spoke a lot to me.
Yeah, it's nice seeing him. Just the care they put into this film, like there's so many little things. Like even the first film when they had the Spider-Man ice lolly, just little stupid throwaway meme stuff. And I remember us all going wild because of the pointing meme at the end. But I mean, obviously the amount of deep layered cuts they have here, like Mysterio from Spider-Ham's universe, just a Mysterio that's a moose. Just little things like that, brilliant. Rhino, and he's a rhino. Just brilliant. Absolutely loved it.
You know the movie's effective too when they show the Spider Point meme in the trailer. Yeah. And then when it comes up, it's still funny as hell and exciting when they do it because you're in the middle of like it's the best tension and release moment of the film because it is so intense what's happening. and then go get Spider-Man, and they cut to it, and they go like
Yeah.
everyone clapped in my screening when I watched it. Like everyone clapped, even though you see it in the trailer. They still somehow it just generates so much, like it pulls you in so much that you're not even thinking about that coming up, and then when it happens,
Yeah.
it still surprises you. Yeah, I loved
And
it.
you know what else it does that not a lot of other comic book movies don't do? No post-credit scene. Not needed.
Not needed.
Just to be continued beyond the Spider-Verse. That's
And
it.
even that,
Class.
I'll say, like, when it goes, even though the title was revealed for Beyond the Spider-Verse, it just hits so much different when they show it
Yeah.
afterwards. Like
Yeah.
the thoughts associated with it and the anticipation of, wow, like what is the implications of that now? You know, I mean, when before you're like, across the Spider-Verse, Beyond the Spider-Verse, okay, we got 2 title reveals. I wonder what it means. But then it turns
Yeah.
into, what is this gonna be then? Beyond it gets you excited in a whole different way than when you first heard it.
Well, that takes us into our final topic, which is Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Sweet.
We've got rumors now that Miles is going to be getting a live action film. Gwen's going to be getting a live action film as well, apparently. They're going to be going beyond the Spider-Verse. Does that mean the characters are going to go into the MCU and live action?
These characters, I hope not. I
Really?
I don't want these guys to I don't
Oh,
want these the animated versions like to
yeah.
translate to become live
Do you
action.
want another
I
Miles origin story?
I mean, this Miles origin is so specific to the Spider-Verse,
True,
isn't it?
true.
You know, like it's not like the Spider-Man, the Miles introduction. If I'm recalling correctly, my Miles introduction was actually the PS4 game, if I'm not mistaken. um,
Wow. Bloody
yeah,
hell. Don't say that on this podcast, on this channel. You'll get bloody slaughtered, mate. You're supposed to have been reading them day one.
no, was not, man. I don't have to be you. There's a reason you do
Yep,
all the
true.
talking. Um,
That's
yeah,
like such a Miles thing to say. This is my I'm Miguel right now going, your canon moment is to have read Miles straight away back in Ultimate Spider moment. And you're like, no, I don't need to be you, you chump.
but yeah, he's got it's so specifically tied to it, and I feel like we're so used to tying these interpretations over into specifically Spider-Verse,
Mm.
whereas I mean, you would have to have some element of Spider-Verse, especially if you're doing like a Spider-Gwen and then a live action one. But I think you would be worrying too much about how it connects to the events of the animated films that we saw before, where I feel like they could do more of their own thing if they do a separate type of, just a separate rendition of them, and they let this
Yeah.
story conclude.
Secret
That's
Wars.
that's
Bring
true.
it
Yeah,
together in Secret Wars. That's what I like to see.
Miles
I'd
coming
like to
to
see Miles live action coming across from this. You know, they had we're doing
that would be
another
cool.
video. Keep
Right, that would be cool. That would be
keep
sweet.
promoting these videos I'm doing, but we're doing one about the incursions in the MCU and how that's similar to what's happening with the stuff in Across the Spider-Verse and how the multiverse is dying. Everything I see is basically flagging to me that the multiverse is dying. It's very fragile, very unstable. You do something in another reality, it's going to cause crap. Whether that's going there and living a life with a family, whether that's dreamwalking with the Darkhold. If you mess around in another reality, it's going to cause crap. And the fact that all the heroes are starting to really touch the multiverse right now, stuff's going to come apart. And I think it's all going to culminate in Secret Wars. I hope it does. I've been rereading Jonathan Hickman's run, building up. I'm still at the new Avengers/Avengers point, which is one book you have the Illuminati, basically doing lots of secret stuff, erasing Captain America's memory so he doesn't remember that they've been destroying worlds across the multiverse. And in the other book, you've got the front-facing stuff where everyone's like, yeah, we love fighting baddies. It's really great. And then that all builds towards Secret Wars. Incredible run, one of the best runs out there. Watching these movies and reading that alongside it, I can see how stuff's starting to slot in. But we will see. We're getting to the 90-minute mark right now. And I think we've covered all the topics. That was a lot better than last. That was our best episode ever. And I'm hopefully going to say that every single week.
And I have rough timestamps to tell you
Just throw
later.
'em in. Yeah, just
Yeah.
throw them in.
Then that
But
way
yeah,
people can hop around. But yeah. Also, Paul, can I just say I got my Batverse shirt from Zero
looks lovely.
Edition. My
Yeah,
Batverse one. I got Michael on here. I got Ben on here. I got Robert on here. And for the Flash, don't have
yeah,
Ezra. I specifically made sure not to put Ezra Miller on my t-shirt.
yeah. Well, I mean, when they can't really have Ezra at the premieres and doing press screenings, it's probably best to just avoid getting Ezra on board stuff. But yeah,
True.
that concludes this show. If you want to support the channel and get some merch out of it, we've got a merch store over at zeroedition.com. You can buy that Batverse t-shirt. I've got a Secret Invasion t-shirt coming very soon that you guys are going to like. The Peacemaker one I wore on the first episode, or technically this is the first episode of Cross the Spoilerverse, but yeah, all the merch. You want a shirt that says Theory Time? zeroedition.com. Huge thank you for checking us out. We are now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts as well. You can listen to us on the go. You can listen to us on YouTube if you want audio only, or you can watch the video along, just see us talking away. Personally, I wouldn't do that, but yeah, it's the options there if you want to do it. Wherever you get your podcasts, we will be there bringing you lots of spoilers from across the Spoilerverse. Huge thank you for checking us out. I've been Paul from Heavy Spoilers. He's been Greg from Real Rejects. I thought he was going to jump in there.
I know. I was like, we have a little bit of delay when we record. I'm like, am I jumping in to say I'm Greg? But,
Yeah, he's Greg.
Yeah, I'm Greg.
He's Greg over there.
Greg time. Greg time.
Yeah, and I hope you guys have enjoyed it as much as we have. Been great speaking to you. We'll be back next week. We're still trying to figure out what day we want to release on. It's kind of weird, but we'll figure it out. See when people enjoy it. If you can let us know in the comments below as well. If you have anything that you want to suggest to us, we're totally open. Just don't say end the podcast, please. But yeah, thanks for checking us out. Hopefully there wasn't too much confusion with the name, and we'll see you next time.